Thank you. That was a lovely introduction. When Colleen asked me to do this, I was immediately thrilled. I mean, having this opportunity to chat with other folks that have gone to University of Maryland. I feel like we're all in different stages of our lives right now, but this is such a cool opportunity to use this as connective tissue between all of us. So there's this, beautiful. It was funny as I was going through how to prep for this workshop, I started to pull up a bunch of different pictures and I was going down memory lane and I was like, college is this really interesting place where it's like a vestibule. It's like this waiting room, right? It's not necessarily, you're not a kid anymore, you're not a young student, but you're not quite an adult either. And there's this really powerful place of transformation and radical growth that's happening. Personally, I didn't see it as it was happening. I just kind of saw a mess of chaos in the moment of all of it. But in retrospect, as I started to reflect on my time at University of Maryland, there was a lot of really wonderful, positive growth that happened during that period. And I hope that you all can say the same. And I know that these periods of change happen throughout our lives. And we just, as I was prepping for this, that just happened to be the time that I zoomed in on. So that's my little soliloquy. As Colleen mentioned, I'm a coach, I'm a speaker, I'm an author, and I'm super, super excited to be here. So before we get started, there are a couple of ground rules here. We all have stuff that's going on. I know many of you probably have things that have happened earlier in the day. We all have things that are happening after this. But for this hour, it will be roughly an hour, just be here, be now, and be present. I will also ask that you be curious and bring an open mind. Some of the things that we'll talk about today, I know what Colleen mentioned just a moment ago, and then also in some of the things that she sent out, that we're going to be talking a lot about failure. And failure can kind of drudge up and bring up a lot of different feelings for folks. And this may also be an approach that you've not taken in the past. So I ask that you bring an open mind. The more curious you are with this engagement and with this opportunity, the more likely you can take away one little nugget of truth that could be impactful in your decision making and in the way that you view failure and how you view your relationship with failure moving forward. Colleen mentioned earlier, there will be opportunities to engage. So we have a chat box here, which is great. We also have video and abilities to engage with one another vocally. So in the times when we're doing breakout groups, which we will do one breakout group, and in the times that we're kind of popcorning and brainstorming out, please do engage, be here in whatever way is most comfortable for you. I'll also ask that you bring respect to this session, not only respect for fellow participants in the room, but also respect for yourself. Again, there's a lot of stuff that kind of comes up when you're thinking about what are my values, what really matters to me. Wow, how have I been looking at my relationship with failure in the past, and how has it really kind of impacted me in this moment? So bring respect to yourself and give yourself a little bit of grace as well, which isn't here, but I'll add it. Maintain confidentiality as well. Again, in these breakout sessions, I don't think anyone's going to be sharing anything crazy, but I think a level of respect and confidentiality would be greatly appreciated, just so everyone feels as if they can fully bring themselves into this moment. And then the very last ground rule is experiment. No one gets to be right or wrong. So that means whatever preconceived notions you've brought to this moment, sure, they could be right, but they also don't have to be right and they don't have to be wrong. So before we get started, I'd just like to see a little thumbs up or maybe like a quick comment in the chat, just to make sure we're all cool with this. Awesome. Great. Sorry, I'm navigating two computers, so this is fun. So I start all of my coaching sessions, and this isn't necessarily a coaching session, but it's what I do by trade, so it's kind of built into my blood. So I ask this question, I say, what's here now? Right, and we learn that everyone is from a number of different areas, whether it's East Coast, West Coast, Europe, across the globe. But I want to know, who are you and why are you here? Why did you sign up for this session? What are you hoping to get out of this next hour that we have together? And I have my agenda, right? I have the things that I want to talk about, but I want to hear from you, what's present? So you feel free to take yourself off mute and just kind of throw it out there or enter it into the chat box. Yeah.
Hello, I'm a 2020 recent grad. I pivoted career paths. So I graduated from the Smith School of Business with a degree in finance and marketing, and I interned with a consulting company last summer. Absolutely dreaded it. It was just not what I wanted to do. And that's kind of when I knew I had to pivot careers. And I'd always had a passion for entertainment, media, film, TV. but I just didn't know if it was possible, and it was kind of something I was conditioned to not, touch or even consider as a career.
Yeah.
So for me, I guess I wanted to sort of look at my relationship with failure and this new territory, and that's kind of why I'm here today. But yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Who else?
Yeah, I want to co-sign what the last person said as well. I definitely came into college thinking I was going to do one thing and came out like with something completely different. And I'm trying to figure out when a failure indicates, okay, you just need to learn to get better at this versus this failure means you're not good at this and you should pivot. So I'm just trying to figure that out right now in a time where people aren't expecting you to have everything figured out. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. 100%. And that's a really, really great point. Does the failure mean, well, I just need to work harder at this, or is it like a sign from the universe? Like I just need to pivot, what does it mean? Right. And so that's definitely something that we'll touch on today. Chennai, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I am in my in the chat box. She says, I'm early on in my career and I've naturally made some mistakes already. I want to be better about not holding on to that bad feeling I get and letting it go, not letting it affect me on my next task. Ite also says, and correct me if I'm pronouncing anybody's names incorrectly, please. Also here to learn about failure and overcoming it in social, non-professional space. Anyone else? Anyone else have a thing they want to put out there into this ether?
Sure, I've got one. My office in San Francisco closed. So I was with the company for 9 years, and I'm currently in the process of deciding, do I want to stay in tech and like financial services, or do I want to do something completely different? Like I was thinking of going into the wine industry potentially. So yeah, it's a big decision, and there's a lot of kind of questions coming up.
That's right. Yeah. And when you face that sense of failure, that's also what comes up, right? We may touch a little bit on this at the end if we have time. In every single one of us, there's a number of different saboteurs and inner critics. So like when you are faced with failure and all the feelings that come up with it, what are the different aspects of you that come out that say, oh, you're going to fail. Nope, that's stupid. That's dumb. They're not going to, this is a terrible choice. Why would you do that? Right. So all of these are inner critics and saboteurs that we also need to like develop tools to learn how to manage as well. All right. And then we have another person that says, I want to learn how to explore, and unlearn all my preconceived notions about failure. Yeah. All right. Okay. So what I'd like to do is take you through a story. And I mentioned earlier, I had the chance to go through and find some pictures of my time in undergrad at University of Maryland. And I was really shocked to find that I had not one photo of the campus or me doing anything relatively academic. So it kind of took a little bit of time for me to find some photos that I was like, oh yeah, this is fine. Like I can share this one. What I want to do is take you through a story that's based in my perspective. It's rooted in my current day perspective. And this is one after years of coaching and years of therapy and standing on solid ground. I feel like I can tell this story with resonance and in a way that hopefully will be impactful to you. It'll be super short. And then what I'll do is I'll mirror it with a perspective that I carried for my entire life. So this is me as a freshman at Elon University. I started out at Elon. I have my little Vera Bradley bag, as one does when you are a freshman in college in 2006. I am probably out grabbing a bite to eat with some friends here. I got a full scholarship to the music program at Elon, but I ultimately decided that Elon wasn't right. And so I was really excited to transfer back up to Maryland, where I'm from, where my family is, where all my friends are. So this was me in all of my glory my freshman year. This is me riding a camel. Promptly, as soon as I got to University of Maryland, I did birthright through a program at University of Maryland. So here I am having the time of my life. I look a little frightened here, but I promise you I'm having a really great time. And this was my second semester of freshman year. This was me my sophomore year. I studied music. I did a lot of operas. I did a lot of performances. Growing up, I was constantly involved in, musicals, jazz choir, all that really nerdy stuff that I absolutely love. So this is me getting to wear a wig and playing dress up and singing my little heart out. This is me visiting a friend in Barcelona. I got to go there for the weekend. Again, I realized that all of this journey that I'm taking you through is me not being at University of Maryland, but these are the pictures that I have, so work with me here. This is me having a great time. I'm at the beach, loving my life. And then this is me when I studied abroad. My junior year, I studied abroad in France, in Nice. I got to go skiing. I had never skied before. I skied in the French Alps. As you can see, I'm wearing my University of Maryland hoodie and just clearly having an absolute blast. I also got to go to the Cannes Film Festival. Total surprise. A stranger handed me tickets out of nowhere, out of the blue. So that was a super spontaneous moment. And I got to have my picture taken and look like a little superstar. And I was wearing jean shorts and a white t-shirt before this, and there was a dress code. So I got to go buy a cute little dress from the only shop that was open down the street and enjoy this really cool moment. This is me riding an ATV in Greece. I got to go there on spring break when I studied abroad, had a really great time. We were on this like tiny little road in Santorini, and I came across this shop that had the best baklava I have ever had in my entire life. And I have never had baklava that surpassed that. I gave myself bangs my senior year, so that was a fashion choice that I will forever have to live with, and we're just gonna quickly move on. And then this is me. Here's my only picture that I have of me on campus, and these are my grandparents. As Colleen mentioned, I graduated with a major and a double minor. I was the first person in my family to graduate college. My father grew up disabled and deaf, and he didn't graduate high school. My mom didn't go to college, and my mom was also disabled. So for me, this was a huge accomplishment, and it was a really, really proud day for me. This is me and my mom. We went to Applebee's right down the street because that's what classy people do. And so as you can see, we're both absolutely thrilled. I'm still wearing my graduation gown, and we're both just kind of floating on cloud nine. So that was the story that I'm telling today from 2020, as shitty of a year as it is for a lot of people. This is the perspective that I'm now able to hold. So what I'd like to tell you is this was a perspective that I did not get until much, much later in my life. It wasn't until I was 29 that I was actually able to kind of figure out what the key was to developing this perspective, which is so sweet and so filled with triumph and success and just happiness and joy and pride. But here's the story that I believed my whole life. I failed at getting into my dream school. So I ended up going to this university where I took out nearly $30,000 in student loans. I failed big time. I put myself into so much debt. I couldn't cut it. I was so uncomfortable. So I decided to just pack up my shit and head back home because at least I knew people there. I couldn't afford anything on this trip when I went. I had to borrow $500 from my grandmother to even eat while I was on the trip. I grew up so poor. My family, they barely had money to keep the lights on when I was growing up. My family didn't have a car growing up. We would go to the grocery store and we would load up the bicycle handles with our grocery bags when we were coming home. I didn't feel like I had any of the right clothes. Everyone else had rain jackets. And as you can see, I'm wearing the same, shitty coat that I'd had for such a long time. And I really had a hard time feeling as if I was going to be successful on that trip. So I told you when I was at Elon, I got a full scholarship for the music program. But when I transferred back to University of Maryland, I auditioned 3 times for that program to become a music major. And I got rejected every single time. I petitioned for 3 years to take classes with the other majors in the program. And as I sat beside them, and they were all majors and I wasn't, it was one failure after the next. And it was such an embarrassing and shameful experience. This is what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a musician. I went into college thinking this was it. This is the last stop for me. I'm a musician. And so it was heartbreaking and gut-wrenching to live through this experience where I'm failing. This is me having to borrow a belt from a male friend because my belt didn't fit anymore because I was nearly 200 pounds and my body was beyond what I would perceive as my own sense of control. I felt very alone. I felt very isolated, and I felt like I had truly failed at honoring myself. Again, this was me not having any money for gear. We ended up going on this trip that was sponsored for a program, so luckily I was able to at least get myself on a bus, but I had to wear sweatpants, and I was so embarrassed that everyone else was able to rent proper clothing, and I could barely afford those skis. No matter how hard I tried to run away from it, I was always going to be that poor chubby kid growing up. And there's nothing I can do to explain this. The bangs are still a failure. They were then and they are now, so that's fine. And here we are at graduation. What was meant to be a really proud moment was me just rushing through because I just wanted to get to the bars and drink with my friends afterwards. And my grandparents were there. This is the picture that I took with them. I moved on about my time, and I tried to get myself out to be social as quickly as I could. This evening, I got into a huge fight with my parents. I was being bratty, and when I looked back on this moment, the only thing that I could see was how much of a jerk I was to them in this moment. And I felt like I really let them down, because as proud as I was, they were also really proud, and this was their moment too, and I failed them. And all throughout my life, I feel like I could tell the story. You show me a picture and I can tell you where I failed in it, right? I can tell you that in my early 20s, when I got my job, one of my first jobs in the States, I was working at a call center, and I was absolutely miserable. And I would cry in the bathroom at work, and I would cry in the weekends and the evenings. And I just knew that there was something more for me, and I was failing. What am I doing in this job? This sucks. I had this grander vision for myself, and I am failing. But it wasn't until I was 29 years old that I had my biggest failure. My biggest failure was I was in the BWI airport, and I had gone home. I had gone from California to Maryland for a wedding. And Friday night, the weekend of the wedding, my dad comes over. My mom had left my dad a year prior. She had moved to Montana. She had suffered for many, many years from unmitigated diabetes. She had lost both of her legs. She was on dialysis, and she decided that she was just going to take a chance on a random male stranger who promised her a better life in Montana. So she left my dad. So here's a lot of baggage and a lot of backstory. So Friday night, my dad shows up. My dad's deaf. I can't really communicate with him on the phone. So he's in person. So I'm like, hey, Dad, it's me and you. We're here. My phone rings. It's my mom. My mom starts to talk, and I said, hey, listen, it's awkward. You're on the phone. Dad's here. I got to go. Dad's here. Can I call you back? And she said, yeah. She sounded so tired. And I hung up the phone. So Friday night passes. Saturday's the wedding. I'm having a blast. I'm seeing all my friends from high school. It's a great day. Sunday, I'm at BWI, and I'm sitting in the Southwest Terminal, and I'm getting ready for my flight. I got my Perrier, I got my sushi, which in retrospect, airport sushi is probably never a good idea. Anyway, I got my bags, and my phone rings, and I look down, and it's my Uncle Chris. And I was like, Chris, I just saw you this weekend. I will call you when I land. I'll call him back when I land in California. But in a moment, I pivoted, and I said, you know what? I'll pick it up. Picked up the phone, and I said, hey, Chris, how's it going? And he said, Marnie, I don't know how to tell you this. Your mom died. And I don't know. Everyone has different experiences with grief and with loss and with death, and I could go on. That's a whole other workshop about how that's, positioned in society. But in that moment, everything that was supposed to be on the inside of me was on the outside of me. And the only thing that I could keep repeating over and over again through sobs was, I didn't call her back. I didn't call her back. And so that for me was the valley of absolute failure. I had failed her as a daughter. I had failed to call her back. I had failed to be there for her in her last years of her life. I had failed to recognize that these were the last years of her life. And there was nothing I could do about it. There was no redeeming moment. There was no do-over. There was no chance of absolvement of this. And so here I was. And what I would deem as my greatest failure was also an opportunity for me, through deep, deep, intense personal work, through therapy and through coaching, to try to figure out, where am I? What am I doing right now? And it enabled me to see I had been looking at things through such a binary lens. I had failed, I had succeeded. I was right, I was wrong. I was good, I was bad. It was yes, it was no. And so I'd been looking at things through such a binary lens, and it was because of this, what I would deem as my greatest failure, that I was able to see that. So this is me and my mom. So as I mentioned, we start to see things as right or wrong, good or bad. And I truly, truly believe that it's from the time that we're children that we start to get this sense that's built from external validation of what is good and what is bad. When we're in school, when we're in communities, when we're with friends, when we're with family, they say yes, they say no, they say right, they say wrong. And especially for young girls, I was talking about this with Colleen earlier, especially for young girls, we expect them to be perfect, not brave. We expect them, if they're not very good at something, oh, that's okay, honey, just try something else that you're good at. Where with young boys, we often tell them to go ahead and fall in the dirt, get a little bit dirty, toughen up, you can do it. So there's much more sense of this dichotomy, this lexicon of right and wrong, left or right, that we instill into young women. And I think that a lot of that, the more that I had this opportunity to reflect back, I saw that this was so, so, so present with me. Everything in my past had been categorized. I had this external validation telling me, yes, Marnie, right, wrong. So then I started to look for it, and I started to get out my label maker and say, oh, yeah, someone said that I had failed at something similar. So yeah, that's a failure. And what unfortunately happened is it became an incredibly toxic relationship with failure. I had either succeeded or I had failed, but the bar was so high and the consequences were so, so, so terrible for failure. And that's such an impressive way to live, right? None of us want to live under that burden of feeling as if we're constantly doing something wrong or looking for a sign that says that we've done something wrong. And the thing is, it's so much more power. The word failure is more than just a word, and it's more than the concept. It's how much power that you give the word that defines how it defines you, right? It's your immediate mirroring to failure that says, oh, wow, okay, so if I have failed, that must mean I am a failure. And that's rife with a number of different, that's a heavy statement, right? There's a lot to that. So I also want to hammer home the fact that a lot of this is about a narrative, right? So if you're telling yourself the story, you're looking back in your past, you have all of this proof that you've created that, yeah, excuse me, I failed there, I failed there, I failed there. It's deeply influencing your present, and it's influencing your future and how you're choosing to make decisions. So I'm going to take a sip of water. And I want to hear from you all. So this is an opportunity for y'all to unmute yourselves and use the chat boxes here. You've gotten a sense from me, what is failure, right? Failure in loving myself, failure in being accepted, failure in making enough money, failure in having the right career. But let's go ahead and get that beast out there for everyone. I want to hear from you all. What is failure and how does it show up in your life? And again, there's no right or no wrong in any of this.
Well, I guess I would say, first of all, I relate to losing a mom, and I was like, your story is just amazing, and I think it's really brave for you to put it out there, what you went through. So that's just amazing. But I just also feel like I've told myself the similar things of like you'll always only have one thing or another, and I'm a lot further away from that now, but I really resonated with your story. So I just want to say thanks.
Thank you. What else? What does failure represent to you? And how is it showing up in your life?
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Marnie. For me, I think graduating into this and kind of pivoting career paths, sort of going against all the ideals my parents set me up for and really just going everything against I knew. For me, failure is now like not being true to my authentic self and what my authentic needs are and kind of discerning the two. I had to take a lot of time to be like, what are my needs versus what or who am I trying to impress? So for me, failure now means, am I letting myself down or am I letting my authentic self down in a way?
Yeah. And Elisa says, failure for me has been not meeting expectations that I set for myself in everything. I set unrealistic, inhuman expectations for myself, but don't expect that level of perfection in others. Yeah, definitely feeling like I'm letting others down or not living up to my own expectations. Comparison always makes me feel like I am failing in one way or another compared to another person. To me, failure and being a disappointment go hand in hand. You abandon your own morals and expectations. Wow. This is, and just reading it, right? Like we all feel this. There's a sense of shame that comes with it, this disappointment, this comparison. And someone mentioned perfectionism, right? Like, gosh, what a beast perfectionism is, because it disguises itself in so many different ways. And it says, oh, well, here's the bar. This is what you got to do. But if it's not absolutely perfect, bust. It's black or white. There's no gray area. It's either you've done it and you've nailed it or you failed. And then what is carried in that basket of failure? What are the other things that it says about you? And what are the conclusions and determinations that you're making as a result of saying, well, I failed? And that's really hard. That is a really, really hard thing. It's impossible to live with, and it's not sustainable whatsoever. So I want to flip the script a little bit. So we've talked a little bit about all the shitty things that failure is, right? And it is shitty. It's not a great feeling, but we ultimately have a choice in how we view it. And we have a choice in how much power that we're giving to this word failure and how it shows up in our life and how it shows up in our stories, right? So we get to choose. We get to be the author. We get to be the narrator. And it's ultimately the perspective that we choose to implement, right? We're all in a perspective today, right now. The perspective that I'm in right now is I'm full of a lot of energy, and I'm feeling really excited and really, really hopeful. I'm like, this is great. I get to meet all these new people. I'm gonna go about the rest of the day. I'm going into the weekend. The perspective that I had yesterday was, I am absolutely miserable. I am overworked. I am really tired. And that was the energy that I was carrying throughout the day, right? So the same way that we can change our perspectives about what's going on in this moment or any other thing, it's super powerful to apply the same concept to the word failure and what it means to us. So this is another opportunity for folks to utilize the chat and to unmute themselves. What are some other ways that we could look at failure? What are some other perspectives that we could take and ways to rewrite the narrative that we've created? What else could failure mean? And this is brainstorming. Nothing right, nothing wrong. A source of growth.
An opportunity for growth and to try new things. Approach something in a way that we wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, yeah. A painful lesson learned. I may take painful out and just say a lesson learned. Michael, is that okay?
Hello. It can also be, I'm sorry. Hello?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it can also be shame and just, when I saw your blurb on, signing up for this, I was like, this just sounds so perfect. And then I didn't look at it. And then when I looked at it again, it was like, it kind of made me think it was just for young people. And I'm probably old enough to be your grandmother, but I am a, alum of University of Maryland. And I just want to say, I love everything you've said so far. And, the failure can make you think of shame. And when you just look at how many years you let a fear or anxiety take over your life,
That's right. That's right. So it could be, another perspective that failure could take when you look at that sense of shame or fear about all the time that you've carried all of that, it could be a light bulb. Failure could be an absolute rock bottom moment like I shared, right? Where you're just at the bottom of it all and you're like, whoa, everything else has been stripped away. What's here now? And how can I use this opportunity? How can I really use this failure to turn the ship around? So what else could failure represent? In addition to, all the bad stuff like fear and disappointment, reminder that you still have room to grow and be better and the journey to being better could be exciting.
Yeah.
I think failure could lead to acceptance. I know right now my picture of how my life was supposed to be is very different than how my life is. And for a very long time, I've had difficulty reconciling the two. And I've started, this COVID has given me time to like recalibrate and get some acceptance that it's okay that my life isn't where I thought it would be. I still have a good life. It's just not the ultimate goal that I had. So
Yeah.
I think it can lead to acceptance.
And isn't that the kicker, right? You have these set of expectations and we hold on to them so tightly, and they all of a sudden become the measuring stick for what is good in your life and what is meant to be and what's supposed to be.
Tagging along to what the last person said, I think for me, failure has always taken away from the ability to enjoy the process and the journey. And I think that's the first time I think I sort of converted that definition of failure into saying like, wow, I'm looking at it from a perspective of either being in the past or being completely into the future, and never taking the time to look at it and say like, wow, like how can I learn from this in the present, or just kind of like make sure that I'm enjoying the process and the journey.
Yeah. It's a thief. Failure is an absolute thief of joy and thief of the present moment. And I'm sure you've all heard some variation of this, but, and you know, sometimes you can hear things 30 times and then you hear it on the 31st time and you're like, whoa, I've never heard anything so profound in my whole life. There was this moment that I had where someone said, there is no such thing as the past and there's no such thing as the future. There is only this present moment. And I'm such a planner and I love thinking about shit in the past. I love dwelling on it and tending to it like little pets. And I'm just like, let it grow. But no, it's not the way to be. The way to be is in this moment, because this is the moment that exists right here and right now. So all these expectations that we had about the past and all these narratives and stories that we've written about the past all of a sudden start to be carried with us, and they're flowing through like a river into this present moment, and they're flowing through to the future. Because we're letting whatever happened in our past define what's happening in our future and our ability to enjoy the present moment. So all of this stuff is really great, and I want to hear a lot more. But in the interest of time, I do want to move on to the next section of our workshop together. So this is an opportunity. It's going to be a 10-minute section, and I'm going to rely on Colleen and our colleagues at the University of Maryland to get folks into breakout groups once I've gone through some of these instructions. So you're going to be in triads. You're going to be in groups of 3. And this is also when I harken back to the ground rules that we set at the beginning of this, you know, being respectful, maintaining confidentiality. A lot of everything that you've shared thus far, I absolutely applaud you and share big kudos with you, because I think it takes a lot of bravery and strength to share these details about ourselves. So hopefully, you know, being in these triads will enable even more of that. So I'd like you to think of a time when you failed, and I put failure in quotations. But I mean like a failure, like you shit the bed big time, right? Like there's no way that anybody else can convince you that this was anything but a failure. Have it be like a quick summary, you know, like a 60-second, 90-second summary. So you'll each have a moment to share your story. And then what you'll do is you'll utilize the power of the group, right? Every single person here is in a different space, place, time, you know, different parts of our lives. We all have unique experiences, skills, education, stories to tell. So I want to use the power of the group to just brainstorm and popcorn some things out there. Okay, great. You know, thank you so much for sharing this. Let's think about a different way. Like, what was a lesson that you could learn from this? Or what is a way to rewrite this story that you've been telling yourself about why you failed and what this failure is? How can we flip the script on that? So essentially what this is a small taste of a practice that unfortunately takes, you know, a long time. It's not just like you're going to leave this workshop and be like, oh, great, like I'm cured, failure is no more. Like that's not what happens, unfortunately. But this is, it's a crack in a door to say, I have the power to rewrite this. And so I want to give you an opportunity to practice some of the things that we've just talked about. Any questions before we go into that, before Colleen sends everyone away into our groups? Nay? Okay. So just really quickly, Colleen, before you send folks out, when we come back, we'll just do like a quick sharing, like, hey, what was the thing that you learned? Or if it was a terrible experience for you, tell us why it was a terrible experience. And then we'll pivot into the kind of last little quarter of our workshop. Sound cool?
Great. And so I'll send everyone into breakout rooms now. I encourage you again, if you're comfortable, to turn on your video, especially now that we'll be in smaller groups, so you can see and really chat with the folks you're joining. I'll set a 10-minute timer automatically, but also if you feel like your group has wrapped up earlier, you can come back to our main session, and that way we'll know if we're ready to move on. Okay, so I'll send you off in just a minute. All right, have fun. Welcome back.
We got done a minute early. We are here.
Do another session. You're going to.
Welcome back, everyone. Great to see some new faces.
I think, can you all see my presentation or no?
No.
No.
Okay, let me put that back up. Okay. Awesome. So really briefly, what was that experience like for folks?
It was nice just to talk to each other and see everybody's going through similar stuff.
Yeah. So there's a sense of commonality, right? Like we all kind of experience this sense of failure and isolation, but the reality is like everyone's got a cross to bear, several crosses, right?
Yeah.
I think it was really interesting how others can take your situation and find the good in it. And then they have the ability to have that perspective, but somehow when it's your story, that perspective, when you're telling your own story, you can't even see that perspective. So it's like, we have the ability to think like this and to see things like that. But why is it when it comes to ourselves, we can't do the same and kind of show up for ourselves how we show up for other people? I thought
Yeah. There was also this interesting sense, and this is very common, right, where we all do this, such that we look at what has happened in the past as absolute truth, right? What's that saying? There's like 3 versions. It's like your side, my side, and then the actual truth. But like, I don't even think that that's real, right? There's always more different ways to look at it. And it's so hard when we're looking back at something that's happened and we are white knuckling it. We're like, this is what happened. I said, this is how it happened. But like the reality is, and like, I remember when I first heard this, I was like, yeah, that's total BS. I'm not going to be able to rewrite what happened in the past. It happened that way and it's going to stay that way. But the more you start to go on this journey of kind of picking things up and looking for clues that are of different shape, size, and color than the clues that you had been looking for previously, right? Because we're looking for the things that validate why we suck, the things that validate why we're not good enough. But the moment that you change your lenses and you start looking for the things that are there in service of you and that are of different inherent quality, then you have the opportunity to look back with new sight and to say, oh, wow, how much more compassion could I have given myself in that moment? What other external circumstances led to the outcome? What were the things that I did really well? What were the strengths that I exhibited in that moment? What did I learn as a result of that? Was it a redirect? Was it a growth opportunity? Was it potentially never meant to be? And how can I find peace with that in a real and true way? So I know we're running up against the clock here. So Colleen, if it's okay with you, I actually may make some on-the-fly modifications here to this.
Go for it.
So talking about decisions, right? Like the way that we view everything that's happened in our past influences our today, and it influences what's going to happen moving forward. And a lot of you have shared similar words, right? Where do we make decisions? They come from maybe a place of fear. Society tells us we got to do it. We make a decision saying, oh, well, this will give us the money. Expectations is a really big one. What are the set of expectations that we have, not only for ourselves, but that maybe other people have about us that we're trying to fulfill? And do they really resonate with us, right? And that's the big thing. Does it resonate? Momentum. Maybe we're just moving so fast in one direction and we feel like, all right, well, I've already come this far. I might as well keep going. Time, feeling like we don't have enough of it, or maybe, you know, there's some relationship that you have with it that says, oh, I'm just going to make this decision because I just don't have the time to sit around and think about it. Impulse, maybe you don't even consider all the different outcomes. Guilt is a huge way that motivates the way people make decisions. Oh, well, you know, I should do this, or I'm going to feel really bad if I don't, or someone else has this expectation of me. And what I want us to start thinking about is there's actually an entirely different way to make decisions, right? We've all kind of talked about how we're making decisions based on who we perceive ourselves to be, but there's a different way to look at it. And that way is through values, right? And I consider values to be kind of a secret weapon. And it's not just like, oh, you know, I go to church on Sundays, or, you know, whatever it is that is considered a traditional value, but it's much more so about who you are when you are most alive. Who are you when you are really, everything seems to be buckled in and clicked in to the right way? And I know every single one of us can think of a time when you're just, you know, closing your eyes and thinking back, wow, that was such a beautiful, whether it's a moment or a series of moments or a period in time where everything felt like there was just flow and there was connection. And that's because those are the moments when you're honoring your values, the things that are most important to you. And when you feel like things are kind of shitty and you're stagnant and it's sticky and you're unhappy and you're feeling like things are just not going the way that I want them to, there is some mix match between how you are living on a daily basis and the values that are really important to you. So what I mean by values, and this is a big old list, we certainly don't have to read through all of this. This is just a couple, right? The things that are really important to me are honesty and authenticity, freedom and expression, and connection. I love talking to people, and I love this opportunity to find ways to figure out how to unlock things for people. So I know that's what's most important to me. When I was crying at that, you know, call center desk job, it was because nothing was resonating. I wasn't doing anything that was important to me. There was no sense of freedom. There was no sense of creativity or expression. I wasn't being authentic and true to my honest self. I felt like I was wearing a mask on a daily basis. And things aren't perfect now, but let me tell you, when I hit rock bottom and that sense of what you want to do is to coach people. It doesn't matter if it's not going to make you the money that you want. It doesn't matter if that's not the path that you thought, like, wow, you got, you know, this degree in public policy. What are you doing with it? It doesn't matter, because that's not what makes my heart sing. That's not what makes me shine. And so I want to leave you all with this, you know, just for a moment longer as you read through it. What are the things that are important to you? What really, really matters to you? And I know we're running out of time. Unfortunately, we don't have time to do this exercise, but hopefully we can take a quick screenshot of it in your minds, and maybe we can send you this deck.
Marnie, I want to jump in quickly. We actually have until the next half hour scheduled out. So if folks need to jump off, they can. And I don't know if you need to go, but we do have the time blocked off if you want to do the demo.
Yeah, I also do want to leave some time for Q&A. I think I may have to hit that like 10:15 my time.
Okay.
But actually, you know what? That's totally fine. This won't take very long at all. So essentially, you know, we're going to go through this experience. And the reason that I put up all of these values just a moment ago is to give you a non-exhaustive list, right? They're everywhere. And also kind of prompt you to start looking for them, right? Using the lens and the different color glasses the metaphor that I had shared earlier, that your values are everywhere. They are in how you communicate. They are in the company that you keep. They are in your hobbies. They are in the way that you carry yourself. So there's a lot of opportunities to try to figure out what they are. And maybe yours are like readily present on the top of your mind. You're like, wow, I really value friendship, or I really value nature, or I really value success or entrepreneurism, whatever the case is. But I'm looking for, as we're going to go through this exercise in just a moment, and I'm going to ask for one volunteer. So I'm going to ask you to think of a peak experience, and it can just be, you know, a minute or 2 minutes, and we'll go through, and then I'll ask you what really irritates you. And so from those two things, I'm just going to write down what I'm kind of pulling out as what feel like the right values. And we'll get an opportunity to say, is this right? Is this not right? What's missing? And then we'll pick out the top one and we'll rate it, like I've listed here in number 3 on a scale from 1 to 5, or sorry, a number 4 rating on a scale from 1 to 5, how aligned and how alive this value is. And then one step that you can take to bring this into alignment. So the purpose of all of this is to say, here's the way that we've been looking at things, but values are a really fantastic way. They're cornerstones. They are stakes in the ground that are totally unique to you, right? Values are the thing that matter most to you. And that's the way that you need to be living your life. And that's the way that you should be making decisions moving forward. Does this honor my values? Is this the lens through which I am truly viewing myself at my most authentic, true compass north, shining bright as, you know, a star in the sky, or whatever other analogy you want to give to yourself? The values are the compass north. So I'll stop talking for a moment. I would love to ask for one volunteer to just do a quick 5-minute demo so we can mine a couple of values so you all have an opportunity to see what this exercise looks like in action.
I don't mind volunteering.
Oh, I can't see who's speaking. Who is that?
Oh, sorry, I'm eating right now.
Oh,
But Ramya, I can turn my one thing on. Okay. Hello.
thank you for volunteering.
Sure.
Okay, so this is very easy, very painless, and an opportunity to just maybe get a little bit more clarity, Ramya, about you know, what's going on with you. So do you have a peak experience in mind, something where you're like, wow, everything was like really in flow in this moment, and I just felt like my truest self?
Sure. So I was contemplating on taking this Martin Scorsese film class. And I remember going into the film class and just loving every moment of it. I just loved the material, felt so at home and at peace. But then, of course, I like withdrew from the class eventually. But for me, that was my peak moment. I was like listening to myself, my intuition, and I was in a class that I was super passionate about for once.
And what else about that moment? Who were you in that moment?
In that moment, I was definitely my most authentic self, someone I didn't even recognize at the moment. I was very inquisitive, curious, wanting to have conversations, being super like wanting to just engage with everyone in the class in the discussions about the movies that we were watching, and just like very much super engaged instead of looking out the window in my normal business classes.
Yeah. And what was important about that moment?
In that moment, I was for once doing something that I was passionate about. Of course, there was the inner critic telling me, you know, like this, you're probably not going to do well in this class. You can withdraw. It doesn't correspond with your like 5-year plan or whatever you want to call it. But I just felt very much in place and really excited about the material, and just like there's something out there that actually like genuinely excites me.
Yeah. And on the other side of that, what's something that, you know, really pisses you off? What's a thing that irritates you beyond belief?
Honestly, I self-sabotage myself right when things get good, and it's just so annoying. Like I can think about that same semester, I had applied for an internship at a production company and I'd gotten it, but then for some reason they wouldn't give me a transportation stipend, which wasn't a big deal. But I remember just thinking and using that as an excuse, like, oh, maybe I can just, you know, do it later, or like maybe it's just not meant for me. But kind of like having this self-sabotaging moment every time when I get something, and like kind of convincing myself that I don't deserve it, or that it's not something that I guess like am deserving of. So like that sort of self-sabotaging, like annoying behavior that pisses me off.
What else? What's another thing that really irritates you?
I guess prior to sort of digging into this, I had very much like a people-pleasing behavior. And really, when I looked back on my college career, which isn't very long because I just graduated, but I feel like I've changed a lot since even 5 months ago. And I think I really used to just put other people's needs and put in a lot more into relationships than I would get back, and just people pleasing and doing that until I was super emotionally and mentally exhausted. And looking back on that, I have a lot of self-compassion for myself for going through that, but just really pissed off at how much energy I expended trying to please other people, whether it was my parents or my friends or just like in general.
Love it. Thank you for sharing all that, Ramya.
For sure.
I wrote down a couple of things, and I'm not going to show you my handwriting because it's really terrible. But I'll just say a couple of the things that I pulled out from that. And you can let me know what resonates the most and maybe what's missing from this list. And then we'll pick one value that you're really excited about. Cool?
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Awesome. Okay, so I wrote passion/fire, like this sense of just like spark and feeling really alive. So maybe it's passion, fire/alive.
Mm-hmm.
I also wrote connection.
Yeah.
Wrote engaged, joy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wrote shine/wings. And I just see this like a butterfly, almost like kind of like bursting out of a cocoon, right? This sense of just like coming fully into your being.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is there a word that comes to mind for you for that?
I guess it kind of reminds me of like the phoenix rising from the ashes a little bit.
Phoenix.
But yeah, kind of like you were alluding to, like sort of, oh my gosh, as cliche as this sounds, like in a way just being like reborn, or just like going into that sort of, I guess all of that, the umbrella term for that, I would say was just authenticity.
Authenticity.
And expression.
Yeah, authentic and expression. I love that, expression. So Ramya, out of all this, and it may be authenticity and it may be expression, which one of those is like the one that stands out to you the most, where you're like, this is a really important value?
I think authenticity, because for most of my life I tried to fit into the mold of other people's expectations, and I really didn't know who I was until I graduated from college, weirdly enough. I really was just playing into other people's expectations and kind of just pushing my instincts away as much as possible. And the moment I started to like realize all that I knew was just not true, and kind of rewriting my stories, I think authenticity is the biggest thing, because that's something I will never compromise going forward.
Yeah, I love that. And there's such a commitment in your voice. I'm never compromising that going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that in you, Ramya.
Thank you
so much. And on a scale from like 1 to 5, like 1 is and 5 is like, yeah, like how alive is authenticity in your life right now?
Right now, I would say, oh my God, the home phone is going off. I'm going to move over.
Look at that, right as the moment that you're, yeah.
That's that synchronicity though. And I think right now it would probably be a 4, because I'm really trying to like go into that mold of like trying to be who I am. Definitely not fully there yet, but I'm leaving that room for that moment where I do feel that way. But I guess 4, because I'm really doing my best to work on that and get to a point where I am feeling fully authentic.
And Ramya, what would it mean? What would it mean to you to be fully authentic? How would you know?
I guess I would know because I would wake up and not have that inner critic, doubting my I guess actually I would know I'm my full authentic self when I'm really just enjoying the present moment and just being very appreciative of the journey and the people around me and just being grateful for everything.
Yeah. There's so much like, I don't know, I just get this like gooey feeling, like appreciating the moment and gratitude and presence and all of these wonderful warm feelings. Definitely. And what's one tiny, tiny little thing, whether that's a way of being or a thing to do, that could bring you a little bit closer to getting to that ultimate place of 5?
Sure. I guess since graduating, I've been practicing like journaling a lot and really just trying to get in my head and work on those like limiting beliefs and like subconscious patterns that have been there. So I guess to get to that 5 is really just like gnawing away at like what those limiting beliefs are and just like really rewriting those like deeply written values that are not true and keep on working on that.
Yeah. And that's lifelong work, right? It's not a one and done. And I think that's a comforting factor. Like, we are all works in progress, right? And that's the beauty about life. I think it was Alexandra earlier said something about comparing life to just like plot twist. And how cool is it to be able to make peace with that in a true way, to say it's constantly evolving. So Ramya, thank you for that. Thank you for your bravery and sharing and your openness and your vulnerability and sharing your story.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, so I've spoiled the homework. You see it in front of you. And this is something that I'd like each of you to do, whether you're sharing your peak experience with yourself and you're writing it down or you're talking into your phone. I'm a verbal learner. I process everything on the outside, so I talk into things like my phone. But really start to listen in on like what really matters to you, right? What are the things that kind of come up time and time again when you feel as if you are in your most resonant space? It's that sense of resonance that you're looking for. So I'll challenge you to this homework. And with that, I will take it to the very last slide. We have just a couple of minutes for Q&A. You can find me on LinkedIn. I've left my email address here, Marnie at marniemclaincoaching.com, as well as my website. Feel free to go check that out. I welcome any and all communications if folks want to stay in touch or get in touch or learn more or continue the dialogue. But before we close out, I just want to leave you with one thing. Life is short. Life is really short and it's really precious, and you are too valuable to be burdened and saddled with this sense of not being good enough and to let expectations rule the gifts that you have and the life that you are here to live, because it is never too late. It is never beyond your control to start figuring out what really, really matters to you and get in that place of resonance so you can truly shine and live a fulfilled life. And I dedicate this to my mom. So.
Oh.
Any questions or last minute thoughts, or I'd love to hear from you all.
What was your moment, Marnie? Oh, sorry.
I didn't hear the question. What was that?
Oh, I was just asking, like, what would you say your peak moment was?
My peak moment was my wedding. It was a year after my mom passed away, and we had a long engagement. It was a 2-year engagement, and it was in Lake Tahoe on the top of a mountain. And there was this moment where a very great friend of the family officiated our wedding, and there was this moment where we'd written my mom into the words that he was speaking, and everything just kind of fell silent, and there was this beautiful breeze that came through, and there were horrible fires that year that we got married, and we almost had to cancel the wedding. And literally the day before, the skies opened up. It was absolutely beautiful. It was perfect. And so I'm sitting there, and this breeze came, and I could just feel everything. I could just feel everyone that was there, everyone that we loved. I could feel my mom, and it was such a beautiful and special moment.
That's amazing. I was gonna ask similarly, like how did you go from the pain of what you experienced from losing her to because you feel like you're just radiating so much joy. So I don't know if it was just step day by day, or like counseling, or how did you, because you really are radiating let's do this.
Yeah. And I'm radiating. Thank you for that, Cynthia. That's really kind of you. That sense for me comes I feel so connected right now. This is doing, I love being in these groups, and I feel all of your energy as well. And so for me, that's what really matters, and that's what's important. But specifically with regards to grief and healing and loss, it's such a funny beast, because I think in our society we don't have the right tools, we don't have the right lexicon to be able to deal with grief, not only in ourselves as individuals, but to other people, right? When you lose someone, people kind of treat you like you're a porcelain doll, and they don't know how to talk to you, and so it's a huge journey. And the thing is, grief doesn't go away. I'm a huge proponent of the notion that grief doesn't go away. You just learn how to carry it differently. You get stronger muscles, you get stronger legs, and you become a stronger person. And there's 2 paths on that, right? One, you could say, screw it, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore, life is too hard. Or you can say, all right, here's my moment where I'm just going to cry face first on the pavement, and I'm going to get it all out and throw my fit. And then I'm going to make a choice what matters to me. And what matters to me is living, a purposeful life, because my life is short. And my mom didn't really get that chance. And she never really had that. She never had those conversations to say, what do you want? Because she didn't think that she was worthy. And there are so many of us that don't think that we are worthy to live a life that is fulfilled. And every single one of us are.
Looks like we had a question in the chat. Marnie, can you flip back to the values slide? Someone wanted to take a picture to use for their homework.
Yeah.
Any last questions before we wrap up? I want to thank everyone, especially Marnie, for guiding us through this morning, and everyone who was so open in participating and sharing some vulnerable stuff with strangers. It's nice to be brought together in that way before we head into the weekend, and hopefully you're feeling inspired to do your homework. But please continue to be in touch with Marnie. If you have follow-up questions, you can always reach out to me and I can put you in touch. And I also encourage you to check out the Alumni Association's event calendar on our website. We're doing lots of virtual programs right now, so hopefully you'll come across some other topics that are exciting for you. Marnie, do you want to say anything else before we wrap up?
I am complete. This has just been such a wonderful experience, and echoing and huge kudos to every single one of you for showing up today and being present and sharing, because this is strange, right, to like be in a group with like complete strangers and talk about feelings and stuff, but I wholly advocate that the more we talk about what it is that matters to us, how we're feeling, how we're experiencing things, the better people we are, and the more able we are as individuals to navigate, but the more we are able to navigate within the world and just be better human beings, and make the world a better place. So thank you all for being here. I welcome emails, whatever, send me DMs, get in touch. I look forward to staying connected with you all.
Great. Thank you again, Marnie. Thanks everyone for being here today. Have a great weekend and go Terps.
Thank you all. Go Terps. See ya.
Bye.